Hey guys, so I wanted to talk today a bit about I think an awkward moment that most founders feel. I know I certainly feel it, and it's been over a decade of me being a founder. And the problem is that you spend all your waking time, or at least a lot of your time, thinking about your business, what you're building, why you're building it, how it's going to help people, um, how to sell it, so on and so on. But when someone comes up and asks you, "Hey, so what do you do? What are you founder of? What are you building? What are you up to?" It's always kind of hard to be uh, clear and help those people get it very early on. It feels like such an oversimplified question, or it feels kind of like there's this iceberg that you're trying to show them, and you can't really communicate it easily. Oh, well, we solve this for this audience using this. You know, um, doesn't really capture it because they often be like, okay, well, so how is that different than so and so, or how is that different than so and so, or who, what's this technology you're using, or what, how is that a problem for them, or you know, um, why those people specifically, and you know, as founders, we just have so much information um, that we've processed or thought about when it comes to our idea. We often have, you know, uh, endless reasons and kind of mazes in our head, maybe in a spreadsheet or notebook or some um, note taking system where we document everything. But a lot of that information becomes expired. A lot of that information is contradictory. A lot of that information that we try to document on our founder's journey is just really hard to maintain. And it becomes tough for us to just answer simple questions like, okay, well, why are you doing this? Or how is that better than so and so? Or, um, give me a simple understanding of how your business works. And unfortunately, a lot of us founders have to kind of dumb things down or simplify them and use analogies like, oh, we're Uber for X, or we're like the um, Shopify for barbers or something like that, you know? And that is really tough because that constrains our thinking and it tries to create these very like repetitive patterns in business models or in what we're doing. And um, a lot of times that kind of explanation, I'm sure you felt it, is met by skepticism or like, oh, okay, you're just another Uber for whatever, like real original guys. But um, it's not that you don't have an original idea, or it's not that you don't have a good way of kind of um, strategizing about your startup. It's more so that the tools that we have to communicate and the ways we have to express what we're doing are so limited. So I know for me, it's a very awkward situation when someone asks, okay, well, what is your startup about? Or what does Sift do? Or how is this? And it's very hard for me to give um, not necessarily an answer that they kind of get or can uh, interact with, but it's very hard for me to give an answer um, that I feel happy with because I feel like I'm either oversimplifying it or kind of like really dumbing down and watering down how I explain what my startup or my business is about. Um, and on the other hand, otherwise, I feel like I'm rambling and I say too much stuff, and people are looking at me weird, and they don't really get what we're doing. Um, but I feel like I've expressed it more clearly or more thoroughly, and so we're always caught in this rock and hard place where it's like, how do we communicate something very complex or something very multifaceted in a very short and simple way to uh, others or strangers when we want to kind of explain what we're up to in our startup. So that's a very generic case, but I mean, one of the worst situations is when you do that to somebody who knows a thing or two about startups. So maybe they're an investor, maybe they're a potential advisor, mentor, teammate, um, and it's usually very hard for you to express, hey, this is what we're doing. These are all the different considerations. We've thought about everything already. We have certain assumptions, sure, but here's how the pieces fit together, and here's why we're doing things the way we're doing. And actually, really being able to have an informed conversation and be on the same page with someone about your startup. Right now, we're seeing the scenario where um, I would estimate probably most startup opportunities um, are kind of lost, and a lot of the serendipity that entrepreneurship and startups and business run on um, are actually lost because there's a miscommunication at the very beginning. Somebody gives an idea, um, explains their idea or explains their business in a way that is oversimplified or sounds generic, or maybe isn't even the most relevant way to explain that idea. Another pet peeve of mine about talking about my startup is, even if I had memorized the soundbite and the very like formulaic template one liner or 30-second pitch of what we do, um, that changes from week to week, month to month, over 6 months, a year, 2 years. That often changes in the early stage founder journey, because the reality is that you're evolving, and the initial idea you set out with, at least in terms of the details and all the nouns and words that you use, probably is going to change, and it's going to be refined. And it may not even really change in the long term. It just may be the short term um, focus that you guys are going, or the way that you're marketing your brand, or what you're doing right now is different than what it was a month ago, or what it's going to be in a year, and you full well know that. But it's like you have this very evolving being, like a baby, and you're like, okay, well, what is your startup? And you ask them for a snapshot. Today, right now, in this moment, this is what I can regurgitate, or this is what we want to frame the startup as. But I don't know who I'm talking to. I don't know where their interests lie, where our potential overlap may be. Maybe they're not really going to resonate with today's version of the startup, but maybe they're really, really going to love the bigger picture that we have, or maybe they really, really love a previous version that we have, or a future version that we have, and we just never get to have those conversations or engage them long enough to actually dig in and show the depth of what we're doing. And it's really frustrating because it adds to this sense of isolation that founders feel. Communication is fundamental. Communication is fundamental for everyone, and especially for founders. They often feel isolated because they can't seem to express or explain to people why they're doing the thing they're doing and what their unique insight is. People look at them funny, people don't get it, or they have to water down what they're doing into a soundbite or into a very simple pitch that sounds sometimes generic, um, or it doesn't really sound that impressive at all. And so it's often very hard to attract or engage, or um, really take advantage of all the uh, synergies or opportunity or serendipity that happens when you meet a stranger who may very well be a great person for you to work with, maybe as an investor, maybe as an advisor, maybe as a teammate. But you guys just never get to that point because at the very early stages of your interaction, there's miscommunication, there's too much uh, projection happening, assumptions happening, and you write each other off as maybe not a good fit. Um, Whereas maybe there was a good fit if you guys could communicate better. And so, what does that leave us with? That leaves us with people running highly on intuition. That leaves us with people um, and kind of these matches happening very much based on timing, whether a person has the bandwidth to actually listen or ask you for a follow up or ask you more questions, um, or maybe they're not in a good mood that day, right? So I think that this communication and being able to express our ideas clearly as founders is actually one of the core problems with um, the sense of like founder isolation that we feel, the sense of um, I think this poor communication or miscommunication that many founders feel early on in their um, in their founder's journey when they're trying to attract investors or teammates or advisors, or maybe apply to an accelerator program, comes from the lack of ability to properly express what is valuable to that audience. Even if you've memorized a soundbite or a very simplified version of what you're trying to do, and say that, it may not be impressive or may not be the best version of what that person wants to hear on the other side. So I think that many opportunities are lost and connections are fuddled, um, because of this poor communication of what the founder's vision is or what the founder has actually done so far. Because most founders, they work very hard. Most founders have a passion and have a drive to build their business that um, is very hard to express. When someone says, okay, well, what do? You can't say, well, I've spent the last 6 months working 70 hours a week thinking about this thing in my sleep, doing ton of research, looking at it from 100 different angles, and I've reached this conclusion. You just say, oh, we do this for this and this. And there's very there's very little, um, there are very little, there aren't many good ways where founders can actually uh, express or prove the depth of their vision or what they've been building so far. Most founders are stuck with saying one line snippets or basic, very simplified versions of their vision and what their business is about, which may be expired, may not even be where the business is going to be in 6 months, and ultimately creates this disconnect with whoever they're trying to interact with, whether that be an investor or an advisor, um, or maybe a teammate, and so on. And so, yeah, it's always this funny, awkward moment when someone asks you as a founder, "So what do you do?" or "What is it about?" And you're like, "Okay, well, not only do I have to repeat myself for the 100th time, but I am still not satisfied with the way I'm expressing this, because it's very hard to find the sweet spot where you give enough detail and enough depth about what you've been building and working so hard on, um, while still keeping things simple and easy enough for a stranger or a new person to get right away, um, in a casual conversation. So I think it's very interesting, that, you know, in 2026, we still don't have um, efficient or standardized ways to communicate in practical setting between founders and the different groups that they're trying to kind of attract. So if you're a founder who has trouble communicating your vision, if you're a founder who has trouble making people believe in what you're doing, if you're a founder who um, even just has trouble keeping track of how things are evolving and how maybe your assumptions or your theories about the market that you're in is evolving, I would encourage you to check out Sift, because Sift is essentially a platform where you can document all of the different considerations and all of the different um, aspects of your business and your founder's journey, and how you form that into something that is not only comprehensive and clear, but also undeniable, and ultimately can help you succeed in the long run.